so much. Well, Mr. Gillen already mentioned it. Europe does not only have an agency for European cooperation in police work, but also one for justice. It's called Eurojust, and it's also located in The Hague in the Netherlands. We are very proud and honored to have the president of Eurojust here, and I think it's about time that I can announce you a woman today. It's Michèle Coninsx. She was in Davos 2 weeks ago in order to discuss cybercrime at the World Economic Forum, and today she is here in Leuven. She's going to give us an introduction to Eurojust's role in judicial cooperation in cross-border serious and organized crime cases. She's also going to explain Eurojust's activities in relation to cybercrime and illustrate Eurojust's role on the basis of malware case example. Ms. Coninsx, the floor is yours.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, it's my distinct honor and pleasure to be back home and to lift up some of the mysteries on the work of Eurojust. A very timely organized conference, and I have to congratulate the organizers and thank especially Anne Menens, manager of the Center, for this given opportunity. Why so well timed? Well, the Minister of Justice already referred to it. We are living in a constantly changing world, a world where everything is changing in a second of time, where the geopolitical situation is changing overnight, and where also crime is developing every single day. That developing crime, that global crime, asks for a developing response, where justice and police have to force each other to join the forces, but not only police and justice, but also the private sector joining the forces together with police and justice. Where also we have to admit ourselves that the line between the real world and the virtual world is becoming thinner and thinner. And if we have referred earlier this morning to the terrorist threat, well, there is a link between the terrorist threat and the use of cyberspace. If we see that, for instance, in recent cases dealt with at Eurojust, CEOs of big companies are threatened with beheading or hostage-taking if they do not sponsor terrorist activity via the internet. These threats are being formulated. If we see that in a lot of recent searches, weapons have been found back, and that we see gradually in our cases that illicit trafficking in weapons is taking place on the dark nets, and that on top of all the difficulties we have already encountered, we see that the weapons are being paid with virtual money. In a constantly changing world, in a world where we need to keep pace with all these developments, our work is quite complex. The beauty of this is that Eurojust, just as in generally spoken, you never have a dull moment. The downside of it is that you have to make the right choices, the right priorities. And in our case, I can start with the key messages. International judicial cooperation is vital. Networking is vital. The exchange of good practices between peers, prosecutors and investigators is vital. Stepping up the legal framework is essential. The classic traditional ways of exchanging mutual legal assistance requests is not good enough. So we have to have action, reaction, speedy reaction, and proactivity in everything we do in joining the forces. And this will be, in essence, my little story of roughly 25 minutes. Do we manage to keep up the pace with these quick changes at judicial level, joining the forces with the police level? We are indeed at Eurojust, based in The Hague, joining the efforts between 28 prosecutors. So one pro country, they all have been trained, drilled in judicial cooperation, international judicial cooperation, or in fighting specific forms of crime, including cybercrime, terrorism, trafficking in human beings, trafficking in weapons, fraud of all kinds, everything which is by its nature trans-border, passing the borders of different member states. We're not alone in this. We have now on a permanent basis prosecutors, liaison prosecutors from the United States, Norway, and from the 3rd of March coming also one from Switzerland. And what we do is we step up the fight, which is an international fight, via coordination and via judicial cooperation. And in essence, and Paul Gillen in a very eloquent way has already referred to the main tools of Eurojust. We are ensuring judicial coordinations. We have the top of judicial coordinations in coordination centers, and we have, very fortunately, since some years, a sort of a Rolls-Royce of mutual legal assistance in joint investigation teams. And thanks to European arrest warrants, we got rid of extradition demands which are taking an eternity, sometimes 10, 11 years, to bring one criminal from one point to another. What Eurojust, in essence, is trying to do is to identify the victims in time, to get a grip on the criminals in time, and to verify, and Paul has also referred to it, verify in time where the acts, physical acts, took place and where they can be translated into tangible evidence, where they can lead to tangible trial cases and convictions and confiscations. Because if Eurojust and the justice authorities in the member states are adding value, it is in essence in having the criminals there where they do belong, deterring the criminals, taking away their revenues, seizing their revenues, and in the best case, taking them away forever via confiscations. Now, what do we mean by coordination meetings, in essence? Well, let's take a case of cybercrime. And if we are talking about cybercrime in our midst, Europol and Eurojust, we are in essence concentrating on 3 forms of cybercrime: sexual exploitation of children online, fraud, theft, the classic traditional forms of crime committed via and through the internet, and finally the hacking, the cyber attacks, where all computer systems are being taken over, where data are being destroyed massively, where your activities are being monitored. Well, let's take a case of pedophilia on the internet. Producing and the selling aspects, and they decided to inform both Europol and Eurojust of the remaining part at EU level. As you can see, some of the member states popped up, Germany, the UK, the Netherlands, and France, representing more than 35% of those who bought the malware and who made use of the malware, with all the consequences we know. The FBI focused on their own US investigation and prosecution, but prepared target packets for the concerned countries in the European Union. One of those concerned countries was the Netherlands, and one of the leading cybercrime prosecutors immediately contacted Eurojust. As besides the countries we just have seen on the screen, there were at least 10 other European countries affected by the malware. So what we have been doing together with Europol was instrumental in sending out the guidance on how to do the searches and how to interview those criminals in Europe via their Siena system. We focus on the legal problems, obstacles encountered. And we had a first meeting in 2013, November 2013, a judicial judicial coordinating meeting, and that means that we are gathering all the players, investigators, prosecutors, judges. We ensure simultaneous translation, and we ask all the players to come to the fore with a presentation on their specific investigation. We started with a few European countries, the United States, Europol, and then gradually January, April, and July, we had 3 consecutive other meetings in 2014. Again, an oil stain. Gradually, we saw that more countries were joining the effort, and by May, we had the 2 action days, in fact, and a coordination center where we managed to have more than 350 searches, a multitude of arrests. 97 persons were being arrested in 2 days of action, and more than 1,000 computers, USB sticks, portable phones had been seized, including also money and weapons were seized. This is the short, sharp shock effect I was talking about. We didn't manage to do this in 1 day, overnight. We needed 6 months. If I compare this kind of coordination with the ones we had 5-6 years ago, it took us at that moment 10 months to get to the right same results. But the problems encountered is, for instance, that there were a multitude of different legislations. In some countries, we needed more than this package from the United States. We needed a mutual legal assistance request. We needed a cover letter coming from the FBI. We needed some extra elements in order to be able to initiate a criminal investigation in a country. In another country, we needed to show the link between the malware and illicit activity. Or in another set of countries, we needed to make the link between the malware being used and identified victims on top of the illicit activity. So these kind of legal and judicial aspects were being thoroughly discussed, but in May, in 2 consecutive days, we were all ready for common actions, with one main concern, that is the press media interface. If you have one leakage in the press, the whole puzzle is scattered, and you do not manage to have the same results as the news is spreading in a minute of time via the social media and the internet. Well, so far, I think that both Europol and Eurojust have been lucky in that perspective, because we are taking absolute precautions in relation to data protection. But all this is being discussed in a common forum, and this led, as we have seen, the same kind of slide in the anonymous action where also Eurojust was involved. We have these kind of slides. Join the forces. Put together all the forces at United States level, at EU regional level, but also including, for instance, Canada, as you can see, and other non-European countries. Join the forces, justice and police, and I'm sure that you will have other solid debates on how to join the forces between the private and the public sector. The private sector is playing a huge role. It's about taking preventive security measures. In Davos, I was told that your business is at risk, that 85 up to 95% of the measures can be taken by the corporate industry by having awareness raising at the level of the management, by having the right policies, by having solid and basic actions in relation to vetting, for instance, by having the right infrastructure, by taking the right preventive security measures. But 5% remains a domain where we have to join the forces, where if you do not join the forces, you will be targeted in a minimum of time. So the key message, besides what I have already said, international judicial cooperation, networking, leveling up the legal framework is certainly private-public partnership. And this is in essence what an international cyber security strategy should be talking about. I wish you a lot of success. I hope I have lifted up some of the mysteries of Eurojust. We have made a long way so far, but there is still an enormous way to go ahead. Thanks a lot for your attention.